All right, so now let's talk about political parties. There was two political parties. We'll talk about them here in a second. I want to give you an overview first, though. And what I want when I say an overview, what I mean to say is that there's Republicans and Democrats, but the Republicans and the Democrats are both split, right? Okay, so the Republicans, there's two groups of Republicans. They're called stalwarts and mugwumps, right? Stalwarts are people who are uh, kind of rigid ideologically to the party standard, which we'll talk about what that means here in a minute, right? Mugwumps are people who are more willing to compromise, all right? The word mugwump actually comes from a native language. I'm not sure which one or even what it means, but the way that they used it was that a person who was a mugwump had his mug on one side of the fence and his wump on the other, right? So that's American politics for you. But at any rate, the point is that they're kind of in the middle, or they're not really tied to any specific ideology, right? The Democrats were split between um, the Southern Democrats, who were more, uh, I would say that they're more invested in white supremacy, right? What you'll notice is that the people that were in control of the South, the Democrats that were in control of the South after the Civil War, were essentially the same people that were in control of the South before the Civil War, right? And so what we see then is that this ideology of white supremacy is it continues in the South, and it's represented in the Democratic Party there. But we'll also notice that the Democratic Party in other parts of the country is going to become the party of immigrants and the party of labor, party of manufacturers. Like, for example, in Los Mineros, if we were to conjecture the union members, would they be Republican or Democrat? They would be Democrat, right? Okay, so that's the split then in the Democratic Party. And then there's a number of third parties, because a lot of people, as I mentioned, this is an era of social unrest, and so the third parties are going to be representing kind of um, the major issues that we've been kind of talking about. One we really didn't talk about yet. We'll talk more on Wednesday. Prohibition, which means we should stop people from drinking, right? And that's going to be a policy of the progressives, and we'll see why on Wednesday. The Greenback Party is going to be in favor of soft money, keeping a lot of money and a lot of currency in the in the economy, and then the Populist Party will be the party essentially of the people, of the agrarian interests, and we're going to talk more about that here in just a few minutes. Now, I want to make an observation about the party system, and the reason why is because there is a misunderstanding, or maybe even disinformation, coming from certain groups in the United States who will make judgments about the current political situation based on the um, policies of the Republican and Democratic parties in the middle of the 19th century, say at around the time of the Civil War, right? So now, uh, before the Civil War, there were actually two parties, but again, they were divided. Okay, they were the Democrats and the Whigs, right? But the Whigs are divided between Northern and Southern Whigs, and the Democrats are divided between Northern and Southern Democrats. Okay, um, and what happens is that the Whig Party essentially falls apart because its major platform was that they didn't like Andrew Jackson. So by the time we get to 1850s, Andrew Jackson is dead. There's really nothing holding them together, right? And so it really dissolves. And instead, what happens is a bunch of people get together and form a new party, which they call the Republican Party. It's the GOP, the Grand Old Party of Lincoln, right? Or actually, the Grand Old Party of Jefferson was what it was. But at any rate, the point here is that this party was made up of Northern Whigs and other groups like New York Free Soilers and a few other groups, um, essentially inheriting the politics of the old Federalists from the Northeast, who were in favor of commerce and big business, but also the Free Soilers, who were in favor of restricting the expansion of slavery, right? So what we really see then is a party that's based on economically, that's based on the interests of big business, but socially is a very liberal party, right? Because the idea of restricting slavery or abolishing slavery was unthinkable, really, to many people at that time, right? So the idea here then is that the Republican Party is the party of big business, and it was also the socially liberal party. And then the Democratic Party started as the party of Andrew Jackson, the first populist president, right, is the People's Party, but it's also socially conservative, more in line with what we would think of as traditional values and that sort of thing, right? So if we look at the Democrats and the Republicans during the Civil War, again, you see Republicans are the party of big business and also socially liberal, really radical. And the Democrats are the party of the people, but also socially conservative. Okay. Now, what happens is, and we'll talk a little bit more about this next week and as we go on, right? Um, One of the things that happens as a result of what we're talking about today is there's going to be a new kind of well, it actually will be a party. There'll be a party called the Populist Party, which is going to be the party of the farmers. But eventually, it will transform into the Progressive Party, which is a party of reform, right? And then that party will kind of decline, but the policies of the Progressive Party will be adopted by the Democratic Party, right? So by the time we get to the election of 1912, the Republican Party is now the party of is still the party of big business, but they've become more socially conservative. They've abandoned the progressives, right? The Progressive Party was Theodore Roosevelt, who was a Republican, but they've abandoned that aspect, and they're more focused now on the economic conservatism, right? And the Democrat Party, led by Woodrow Wilson, will still be the party of the people, of labor and immigrants and that sort of thing. But now they'll also become the socially liberal party, right? So we'll see then that the Republicans are the party of big business, have always been the party of big business, but they were the liberal party and have become the conservative party. And the Democrats have always been the party of the people, but they were conservative and have become more liberal. Now, the reason why I say that is because if you listen to the radio, which I don't, but if you did, right, or you look at your memes on Facebook or whatever, it'll tell you, oh, well, it was the Republicans that freed the slaves and the Democrats were the slaveholders. Well, yeah, that's true, right? We're talking about Republicans and Democrats in 1860. We're not talking about Republicans and Democrats in 2021. So if your argument is that the Republican Party is the party of civil rights because of the 1860s, you're really making a historical mistake. You're not really talking about history as it really happened. And we need to know that. We need to know that, yeah, the Democrats were the party of white supremacy, right? But now they're not, okay? That doesn't mean that no Democrats are white supremacists or that all Republicans are. In fact, there's a group, the people who were in control of the South before the Civil War, the Democrats, actually took control of the South after the Civil War, and they continued their ideology of white supremacy. Okay, so then going into the 20th century, we see that these Southern Democrats, as the rest of the Democratic becomes more progressive, the Southern Democrats are going to become more disaffected, right? So in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, the Democratic Party will become the party of civil rights, and that will alienate these Southerners, Democratic Southerners, who are the party of white supremacy. As we hear George Wallace, segregation now, segregation forever. And what happens is that as they become disaffected with the Democratic Party, they will go to the Republican Party, right? So that's why if we look at the South today, it's almost all Republican. Well, it's not because they favor big business so much as the fact that they were alienated from the Democratic Party by their civil rights stance, and that Richard Nixon actually appealed to them at what was called the Southern strategy to get them to vote for him, because he dog whistled essentially saying that, I'm on your side, at basically appealing to the voters that were supported George Wallace, right, the Southern segregationist. So the history of the party system is a lot more complex than just, the Republicans now are the same as the Republicans then, and same with the Democrats, right? It's a complex transition that happens over time, right?